11:03. So come on, y'all, come on in. And I have figured out how to download the live session now from Instagram. It was a real challenge since they made their September changes at Instagram. In the past, I've just been able to just do whatever and just download it, and I can upload it to YouTube. But I guess somebody Instagram said making it too easy. So,
they gotta make us work. Keep everybody on their toes.
Right. So the first two sessions of this series, unfortunately, if I cannot just upload it or email it to people. So you can see it on IGTV, or if you email me, I have a little workaround. But it's not like 100% legal. So just let me know and I'll send it to you. But so, which is unfortunate because our last session was with Dr. Robin McCoy of McCoy and Associates, and she had a really great talk with me about the legal piece and helping people find free and inexpensive legal advice using social media and finding out what are the big pains for people. So that was a fun session, and I'm going to figure out a way to get it to people. But so today, well, let me back up. So I'm Leslie McGraw with Let's Go Social Media Marketing and Training, and you are tuned into So That's My Business. So this is a slight spinoff of somebody that I adore. And now, Dr. Mishelle, I found out in the last couple weeks that you adore her too, who is Tabitha
Yes.
Brown. She really reminds me a lot of my Southern relatives. I'm not a daughter of the migration technically, but I am a granddaughter of the migration, and my paternal family is all and still in the South. So she'll say, because that, I could do that because that's my business. So I said, I was talking with my cousin. I have several cousins that are also clients. So this is one that's a client cousin. And she said, I think people don't understand all the time what you do, like how you help people. Because I don't fit into the squares that have been put together for digital marketing, right? So I'm not, I don't help with business plans, but then on the flip side, like I'm not going to set you up with 4 or 5 sites if we don't have a business plan. Like we have to have that to do that. I know a lot of people get you a website and they'll get you a Facebook page and all that, and you don't have any plan, and that's just not how I roll. So I met Dr. Mishelle, who's our guest here today. I guess it was about 4 years ago.
Yeah, my business is 4 years old. It's 2017, and it like
Yeah.
probably right around, maybe a little bit earlier, but around this time of year.
Right. So I met her, and the her initial purpose was just to get like an online presence or to clarify her online presence, because she already had the Melanin Collective, which she'd been doing some stuff with, and of course her own personal social media, but she wanted to start her own clinic, or her, how's the best way to say it, their own facility?
Like a private practice.
Private practice. Forgive me. I don't have the right term all the time. So I want to give you her bio so you just know how kick-ass she is, right? So Dr. Mishelle has more than 12 years of experience. Let's start there. Like, does she look like she got 12 years of experience? No. But she does. Provide counseling in university counseling centers, community mental health settings, and private practice. She is often sought out by clients who are reluctant to try out counseling, aka athletes, macho men, women who've been told you could do it, like I didn't grow up in a pro therapy household. Mishelle has served 2 years as the president of the Metro Detroit chapter of the Association of Black Psychologists, and she is the founder of the Melanin Collective, an organization that serves as an online educational resource and host of local events for Black mental health and well-being. So what I love about her social media is she brings it full circle. Like sometimes she'll mention shows and pop culture that I either know, but a lot of times I don't know. And you've actually been a good sound piece. So they need to hire you as a as a person for their commercials, because it's made me like, oh, that sounds like a good show I should watch. So, and then there was I can't remember what it was, but you did a live recently, and like people were asking like what was better, like A Different World or Blackish, or no, Grownish.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I think it was, we did a TV show, Black college TV show. So it was A Different World or Grownish, and then Black college movie, and it was Higher Learning or School Days.
Right. So, because I was all into that. That was really interesting. And it brought like the idea of growing and therapy, very immediate for me. So the other reason I wanted her to come in September, so I didn't give her a lot of notice, but I was like, it's September, and I forgot it's Suicide Awareness and Suicide Prevention Month. And I was close friends with I'm still friends, but I was really close friends. I used to live near and had a close relationship with somebody who had ongoing suicide sort of issues. And thankfully she's still here. And I had a childhood friend that lost his battle to depression with suicide this May. And there's so many things we could talk about, but one of the things is I did see these situations where out of love that and also I had a pastor friend that died of suicide, and I've watched how the family and friends really came and supported them with what they had to support with, but not necessarily having the tools and the breadth of knowledge about depression and suicide to really help them in long-term or meaningful and effective ways. Yeah. And I'm 9 years into my small business or entrepreneurial journey, and I've dealt with my own depression, and so many business owners and community leaders deal with mental health issues that I thought it'd be great to have you on here to talk a little bit about what you do and how you can have that vulnerability, or do what you need for yourself, but and still be seen as a leader, still be seen as on top of your game, because sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm having a bad day, and they're like, oh, I part of my mind says, if I say that, then they're going to think, oh, well, I can't have her manage my online presence. She can't even manage her thoughts, So I think about that. Like that's my inner voice sometimes. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but I'll let you take it and explain however you'd like to.
Yeah. So I think what's really hard is that we live in a society that has these myths about strength, that it means that you get everything right every day, that it's all smiles all the time. I listened the other night to a podcast with, excuse me, Chad Sanders' book. I have it over here on, it's called Black Magic. And he learns from his own experience, but then also from other Black leaders, and from their triumphs and their trauma. And he talks about, there's this really cute moment where him and Brene talk about like the personality of Google, and like when he got hired there, and he's like, so everybody's kind of got this like 75% smile. And, you exchange these, you have these exchanges where it's like, I went hiking this weekend and I did this, and they go back and forth. And I think we all know what it's like to walk into spaces, our own businesses, universities, corporations, and we know how to pitch, we know how to put ourselves together. And sometimes I think we forget that it's an act, that we can be completely competent. We can have, I always say we're all our own mixture of magic and mess. And I think we think if we're not 100% magic every day, then there's something wrong with us. But the reality is I have the cool job of working with like just amazing people. One of the things that kind of I didn't set out to do, but just happened by virtue of being so close to University of Michigan and stuff. I work with tons of Black high achievers, activists, artists, people like that get dual degrees, like PhD, MDs, things I'd never even heard of before. And I think what I realized is that the closer up that we get to people, we realize that everybody has their pain points. Everybody has the areas of their life that aren't together.
Right.
And when you can own that, I think you're a different kind of magic. When you can take care of and get support around those places, I think you feel different because you don't have to pretend. And there's spaces, don't get me wrong, where we do have to, because of culture, kind of sometimes need to put on our best face. But I think we also need places where we can drop that armor down and where we can get what we need. And when we don't have that, I think people suffer. And when we can't give voice to these things, I think we become a part of the pretending that's really eating everybody alive. I think my brain is not one that holds on to numbers very well, but I think the statistic is probably like 1 out of every 3 people is dealing with like depression at any given moment. So if you're sitting in a room and you have one person sitting on each side of you, one of the 3 of you, look to your right, look to your left, is probably dealing with anxiety or depression in that moment. And so it's very much like the common cold, and the fact that we can't talk about it. Like, I don't have a lot of shame in saying like, oh, I had a cold last week, or, oh, I got a cavity, or, I'm getting older, and when I move this way, all of a sudden, my back is not feeling quite right. And I think that we need to have that same language for our mental health. Speaking of TV shows, I often talk about This Is Us and Randall, because he's like this Black guy who does all these things,
I
and
haven't seen This Is Us. Can you give me like a 2 or 1 minute little explanation?
Okay.
What is This Is Us?
Completely binge worthy, completely binge worthy. And this season is about to start with the last season ever, so there's going to be people, me included, out here grieving. So we will not be okay. But basically it's a story of a family who end up having triplets. I think they call themselves like the big 3. And Randall's adopted, so she has twins, and he gets left at the hospital at that same time, and they adopt him, and so it's the 3 of them. And so it's this white family, they adopt this Black son, and it jumps back and forth in time between like when the parents met, before the kids were even born, when the kids were little, when the kids were in high school, college, and then their adult days now. And so it's and they deal really well with things like race, like how the parents don't always get it right. They deal really well with trauma, like Randall has the trauma of not knowing who his parents are and how he deals with that, but then he also has this ongoing battle with anxiety. And then, I mean, even last year they dealt with so the 2 main characters, which I'm just still out here praying that they're going to have a spinoff, because I'm not ready for Randall and Beth. We call R&B. They are like it's just like Black love. It is so cute, and you can tell they have Black writers because they get stuff just right. So his character is a business person, and I can't remember exactly what his job was. And then he kind of has this just mental health crisis where he just deteriorates, and you find out that happened to him when he was younger. But he actually recently he got a Black therapist. Well, he got a therapist, and then he ended up switching to a Black therapist. So you just feel like you've been with them through their whole life story. Sterling Brown plays character. And there's a conversation that I love between him and I think it's Omar Epps, who guests on the show sometimes, where they're talking about therapy. But they all show that who he is who he is, but how he manages his mental health affects whether or not he can really show up and be the partner that he wants to be, the dad that he wants to be. And so a lot of this is how are we managing it? Where can we talk about it? Because so many of us, it's almost like with Gabrielle Union, when she talked about infertility and things like that, there's these things that we deal with behind a curtain somewhere. And when we don't have community, we can't make sense of it and heal the way that we really could. It's almost like we add unnecessary suffering.
Right. I want to just jump in right there. When you talk about community, I'm a big, I use that word a lot. Like I really know how important it is. When you come from a place where you're not like the rest of the people in your community for whatever reason, or whether it's a bad childhood or you had to move or whatever it is, it's this thought of like, cling to your community. What if you don't have community? You're building boundaries. I mean, a lot of people around my age are at a place where the community they had 20 years ago just doesn't exist. So could you speak to like, how do you build healthy community without repeating the same obstacles, like attracting the same people and attracting the same situations?
Yeah. So I think sometimes I think there's just it's important to almost like sit down and take inventory. And again, if you have a trusted person or therapist that you can do that with, it's helpful. But I think sometimes asking yourself, like, what do I need in community right now? Like for me as a business owner with 2 kids, in elementary school, what I need out of community is different than what it used to be. And
Right.
So really assessing what are those needs, because like let's just say you're not going to find the same things at the club as you will at church, as you will like maybe in some online group spaces, maybe
Right.
as you would volunteering somewhere. And so I think sitting down first and foremost to say, what do I need? Who are the people that are missing in my village? And then looking back a little bit, where have the hurts been? What are the things that did not feel good to me? What do I not want to carry forward? What are some of my fears? And sometimes those fears are insecurities of like, maybe I'm not good enough because I didn't feel like I belonged before. And that's places I think we have to dig in. Like sometimes the people around you weren't equipped to love you and you think that it's because you weren't great, or the people around you had different isms, like everybody around you, you were darker than everybody, or you were more full body than everybody. And so healing those pain points, because if not, they're going to walk into every room with you. And so just knowing those things, but also knowing, I'm always like giving out resources. There's this book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, and it's a newer book on boundaries, and it's by I don't know if I pronounced her name right, but Nedra Glover Tawwab. Even just following her on social, she gives so many
Nedra,
practicals.
I can't see it. I'm seeing it backwards, and I can't.
Nedra Glover Tawwab, Tawwab.
Okay.
But there aren't very many new books on boundaries, and also books written by a Black woman. But even just following her on social, she gives so many great. Some people are real generous with the amount of information that they put out there, and she's one of those people. She gives great ways of communicating your boundaries, but even understanding how they work. And we need people from different cultural groups to write about that, because you can't just maybe say it the way that it would make sense in somebody else's culture. So I love her book, but starting to learn like what have I maybe tolerated that I don't want to tolerate anymore. It's like when you build a business or when you start a relationship, they say build how you want to live. And so
build how you want to live. Let me write that down.
And so, it's thinking about what do I want my relationships to look like, and what are the boundaries that I want. I want people who respect my no. I want people who maybe are better at talking. Like, I don't want to just be in groups where I show up and everybody talks about, their job and their advancements. And I want places where it's okay to, I need places to be silly. I need places to, like, I love communities like Girl Trek. Like, I need people to walk with, because I'm not out here walking by myself if I don't, so really thinking about those needs and being intentional and being okay with starting small. Sometimes if you have a lot of intersecting identities that have been marginalized, finding little online spaces where people are gathering and talking about those things, so that it's like, sometimes the social media place, I don't think those should be your only points of connection, but sometimes those are starting places to feel more okay in your own skin, and to know that there are other people out there like you, to kind of end that sense of isolation. But the other thing, I'm an introvert, so when it comes to me building, I always relationships, I'm always thinking about where can I kind of get the most bang for my buck, because I again, time wise and also just energy wise, I'm not trying to be everywhere. And so I'll often, people joke that I always know what's going on around town, but half that's from like Facebook and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. I remember when the movie Harriet came out, and there was two different groups that were hosting kind of like a Black community screening. And I remember I met somebody there that we sat next to each other. She was there by herself. It was me, and like, we became great friends. One of the women, I love spoken word. She did spoken word there. We met. And so just thinking about, where am I likely to find people who have the same hobbies as me? For people with kids, sometimes showing up in some kid spaces. The other thing, though, and I'll stop talking about this, we also need, I think, the intergenerational relationships, because if all of my friends are moms and working and all that stuff, we have the least time, But like, I have really great friends who are college students who like pour into my boys, and they love to come over because I like to cook, so we can build these communities of mutuality where there are ways that they pour into me because they're in a different season of life, and ways that I can pour into them. And then I think we also got to figure out, like, where do we find our aunties and our grandmas, like the people who, they're less, they're a little bit more unbothered because, they've seen a few more seasons, and they can kind of hold us up and together. But we can also show up for them because sometimes they do have more time and not as many people checking on them. And so I just think it's about that, whether you're looking at professional relationships or our personal relationships, trying to build that mutuality where we're pouring into other people and they're pouring back into us.
That is such a good point. That is such a good point. Yeah. I don't have any college students in that way, but I do have a few young people that I'm connected to, and I would agree that it's good to hear their perspective, even if I don't agree with it, but it's good to hear it, and it also keeps me, my line of work, I have to be connected to people of different generations. Like, it's really important for me to know what you need to make an effective TikTok resume, although I never plan to make one.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because people will tell me, what if I forgot who, like, that I'm like an incognito millennial, because so many of my clients are like in grad school or in undergrad, and so I learn a lot, and I think it enriches me in so many ways. I remember being on campus and running a group called Learning from Lemonade, and hearing how people like of my generation were thinking about Lemonade, and then how like millennials and Gen Xers were thinking about it. And then, even women older than me, I think there's so much richness there. It's not so much that we all walk away with the same idea, but we've learned some things. We've balanced each other out by seeing it from different lenses.
Right. So I think you already know this, but my kids, that's what they do for me too, because they're really in two different generations. I have a 24, almost 25-year-old, and have a 5-year-old. So they have such different takes.
But even what you said about, I think about boundaries, even with social media, so this is like switching back over to the business side of things. I think it's so key to know like what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. Where your people are at. Like, I'm on Instagram mostly because that's where my clients are most. I know that it makes me old, but I probably spend most of my own personal time on Facebook. But it was clear to me pretty much at the beginning that I was like, I'm not going to do Twitter. It's just too many. It's for my brain. It's too many words. It's too much to keep up with. recently, Clubhouse started and lots of mental health professionals were running over there. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. I was like, I'm not doing one more thing. Like, I can't do it. Um, TikTok, I love to watch them sometimes. I refuse to download it because I'm like, I don't want to spend any more time on social media. But the NAP ministry is another page that I really love. And she
Yes.
was like, I'm not going to drive myself into the ground, making reels, doing this, doing that. And I think that's another area we're figuring out, where do I deliver the best quality, and like where's my audience at, and where do I draw the lines? Because again, I want to build how I want to live. I don't want to be out here talking about wellness and running myself into the ground, because of running ourselves into the ground, the same way that affects our immune system, it also affects our psychological health.
Right. So, right. And to add to that, as a social media strategist, when I work with people in strategies, that is what a lot of people come to me. They want to be on everything, or they want to be on this, oh, I feel like I need to be on TikTok, or is it Snapchat, or like they're confused, and I'm like, where do you think people are going to need you? And so what I try to tell people is to have one or two places that you're actually physically there, or posting and listening, because you need to be listening too, right? And then, and if you can only do one, have it be one, but to go get your names everywhere else. So if you're not going to be on Twitter, grab that name so nobody else has that name, and just put in your profile bio, like, if you, I have this space, located here. They have the website, but I post regularly on Instagram, or I post regularly on Facebook. So they know, okay, this is the real deal. This is whoever it is on Twitter, but you're not going to find me here. Like, I'm not going to be there. But it gives people that way of, knowing it is, and it also keeps down what a lot of times, as you grow with your following, there are bots, and there are people that will take advantage of your names in spaces if it's a cool name, like that's one of the things that's part of how they started the verification thing. I mean, there was thousands of Beyoncés, like there were literally thousands at one point on Twitter. Everybody said they were the real Beyonce, and so nobody's trying to be Leslie McGraw right now, I don't believe. But
Not yet. Not yet.
that maybe one day. Yeah. So, and also a lot of us are starting to use paid methods with our social media. So I have to put that plug in. Like, if you have any pay structure, you need to be protecting your social media accounts the same way you would your bank account. Like, I just had a client pay me through a Facebook inbox. So I can't play around with my passwords and keeping up on stuff. So just remember that. So in closing, this has been so great to have you on here. And I will, like I said, I think I have it down now, how to download it. So I'll post that up so you guys can look at it at your own convenience. But I wanted to leave you with where you can find Dr. Mishelle in the future.
Can I say one more thing just about suicide prevention?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important that people know, like, I think there's almost like a myth that, like, Black people, we don't have time for depression, we don't have time for suicide. And we know that that's not the case, that suicidal ideation affects everyone. I often tell people that it's like when your body's running a fever of 100, okay, but as it starts to get up to 102, 103, we know there's really something wrong. And often suicidal ideation is our body and psychological systems way of telling us life feels unbearable. What's happening inside feels unbearable. And it means we need more support. Like, suicidal ideations can be survived, but we really need help and support. And so we need to learn to be able to ask people when they're saying, like, I don't feel like I can do this anymore. I don't want to get out of bed tomorrow. We need to normalize being able to ask people, like, are you having thoughts of suicide? when it gets bad, or do you ever have thoughts of killing yourself? And if the answer is no, then great. But sometimes people need the relief of being able to say it out loud and not feel like a horrible human being. And so I love that we were able to talk today. On IPSY and this together last year, we did a whole hour session that you can find online about how to talk about it, how to get help, because I think the ability to do that and to know that community will still hold and support you the same way we do when people have cancer, the same way when they're dealing with other kinds of difficulties, that's so much of the key of prevention. You're not a different kind of person, a worse person, a weak person for having suicidal ideation. You're just a person who's experiencing a lot of pain.
Thank you. That is, and I'm hoping that I always think about just one person hearing that, Um, I was a Red Cross trained person to talk to armed forces emergency through emergency lines in the night, like after. It just makes me think about military after they found out like they had like a close immediate relative pass away, and all sorts of things come out of their mouth, and sometimes they're really really down, and I was not trained to know what to say, but I just kept bringing them into the moment. I think that's part of it, is remembering, just reminding them that it's okay to have this thought, and
Yeah, I think we want to say like, don't think like that, but it's here. It's
right.
that.
That makes
And
me feel worse if you say you shouldn't feel bad right now, or yeah.
yeah, and I
So
think people say, well, you have so many reasons to live, and I think people know that, but they also have reasons right now that feel very unbearable, and both of
yeah,
those can be true.
right. The weight of the grief and the weight of the, okay, I know it could get better. They can coexist, right? So I'm just so glad that you're able to speak to that, and hopefully this will open the door for more conversations. I'm starting to hear more conversations.
Yeah. I think business people, like we have to keep it pushing, and we bring that to our mental health. And 'cause, like, you're like, oh, I don't have time to schedule that doctor's appointment. I don't have time to do this, and we don't have time to not deal with when we're hurting inside.
Amen. All right. So, you want to tell people where they can find you?
Sure, yeah. So on Instagram and on Facebook, you can find me at Dr. Mishelle. If you want to find out more about my private practice, you can find that at Collaborative Changemakers. And then if you're really interested in Black mental health and more of these like pop culture connections and things like that, you can also find me at the Melanin Collective.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.